Hello everyone, welcome to The Social Doctor, and this is Dr. Ayushi. The Social Doctor is a platform for the doctors by the doctors, where we are on a mission to help each and every doctor with his or her career growth. And we do that by discussing journeys, experiences, and knowledge from successful medical practitioners. And today we have Dr. LP Kashyap with us. With more than 15 years of his experience in nuclear medicine, he's here to tell us about the scope and opportunities with the branch of nuclear medicine. How did he progress? How did he establish his personal centers in two cities, Ahmedabad and Udaipur, and lots more regarding that. So welcome, Doctor, to the platform. It's really nice to have you here.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Ayushi, for having me on this platform today to speak about nuclear medicine and my journey in nuclear medicine.
Yes. So, let's start, let's understand a brief about your journey. How did it, roll over since the start?
I actually belong to Hyderabad, but my entire schooling was done from Delhi. So I'm more of a North Indian than a South Indian.
Okay.
For my MBBS, I went to Orissa, Berhampur. And after completing my MBBS in 2000, I came back to Delhi, gave Delhi PG exam. And fortunately for me, I got through my PG entrance exam in the first attempt. My rank was, I think, around 192, 193 in the Delhi PG. And at that point of time, when I went for the counseling, I had almost all the clinical and paraclinical specialties open for me. So I have been kind of a bit of a rebel since my entire education days. Like before getting into medical, I had got a seat in engineering. I got into dental colleges, but I was hell-bent upon doing MBBS. So I dropped those, did my MBBS, came back. And I always wanted to do something which was not kind of a herd thing. What everybody would do, I did not want to follow the path. So I was looking into the fields which are out of the box at that point of time. People were not willing or not knowing actually at that point of time how it was. After completing MBBS, when I came to Delhi, gave my PG exam, I was going through the courses that are available in Delhi once I had my ranks out. And two courses actually came to my attention. One was physical medicine and rehabilitation, and the other was nuclear medicine. And I found that not many people were actually aware of these two fields. So I started scouting around, called up different hospitals to find out what is the course exactly, what is the scope and everything. We did not have the luxury of internet like what we have today. This I'm talking is back in 2001. So I had to go physically to a couple of hospitals. I went to Gangaram Hospital, I went to Apollo Hospital, saw the departments there, and I was so impressed by the kind of setups that are there, the kind of work that was being done in nuclear medicine. It was a pretty simple decision for me to take up nuclear medicine at that point of time. And at that time, people used to say that nuclear medicine is taken by force and not by choice, because once you come towards the end of the counseling, the only seats left for nuclear medicine, and people would take nuclear medicine by force if they don't want to drop a year. But at my rank, I had actually taken it by choice, and I'm pretty happy with the choices that I made.
I'm sure. So glad to know about this. So now let's understand what exactly nuclear medicine is. What does it cover? And, because you have already opted for it and you wanted this branch. So what did you see inside it?
See, actually, nuclear medicine is a branch of medicine that uses radioactive material to diagnose and treat various diseases. So that is a textbook definition of nuclear medicine, what you would see. What I saw when I went to these hospitals was one branch of nuclear medicine, wherein we use something called as a gamma camera, which is kind of a conventional nuclear medicine. Now, to understand nuclear medicine better, I think a lot of people who would have joined us today, they would easily understand and relate to what radiology is. So I like to keep the corollary open during this entire discussion, that what you expect in radiology and how nuclear medicine differs from radiology in those aspects. So when we talk about nuclear medicine, it is more like conventional nuclear medicine and the newer modalities which came up later in time. So conventional is like the X-ray and sonography, like it's been there for a number of years. In fact, in India, it's been there since 1950s. And the newer modalities called the PET-CT came in India in 2001. So when I joined my PG, there was no PET CT. There was only this gamma camera was there. I went to the departments and I saw what they do, how they do. The first thing that struck me was the departments are very different from any clinical fields. The number of patients that you see is very limited. They're very clean departments, no emergencies, no working overtimes, strictly 9 to 5 job, and the kind of scans that they do. Basically, the crux of nuclear medicine is that we deal in answering the question of how much or what is a percentage function of each and every organ in the body. For example, if we take the kidneys, the brain, the heart, the liver, what is the functional capacity or the functional status of that organ? That is what we are trying to say. So when I saw that how important nuclear medicine investigations were in guiding the doctors in their future management, it hardly took me, as I said, one day to realize that this is what I want to do. And then in due course of time, when I've started working on PET CT, PET CT is a modality where again we use radioactive material. 90% of the work that is done on a PET CT is for cancer patients, whether it is cancer diagnosis, whether it is staging, whether it is evaluating the treatment response or surveillance post-treatment. Now, PET CT has become the mainstay of almost every cancer that we can think of in the body. Very, very few exceptions are there, but mostly we do for almost all the cancers across the world. So these were the diagnostics that were there, which attracted me at that point of time. Over the past 4-5 years, now we are entering into the realm of therapy also. Initially, therapy would constitute maybe less than 5% of the total workflow in the diagnostics in the department. Therapy was now, we have gone to the molecular level and the receptor level. In nuclear medicine, what happens is that we try to see what kind of receptors are being expressed by the cell, whether it is a tumor cell or whether it is a hyperfunctioning organ. And then we attach a suitable ligand to these radioactive materials. And these material will go attach itself to the receptor, and then it will act, whether it has to destroy or whether it has to kill, whatever it has to do, whether it has to burn chemically, it will do. So what happens is, because it is receptor specific, the amount of collateral damage or side effect profile is almost zero. This is an example of what we call as a targeted therapy. Now, targeted therapy is coming up in a big way. Probably 10, 15, 20 years down the line, almost every tumor is going to have its receptor status mapped, and we are going totally into targeted therapy rather than the general chemotherapy or radiotherapy. So these are the things which attract a lot of people, those who are into diagnosis, those who are into newer things. So definitely it is not the run-of-the-mill thing. That's what almost 9 out of 10 people are doing. But yes, it is a very exciting thing to see. And unless and until you have actually seen it happen in front of you, probably you'll not be able to gauge the kind of impact it can have on patient management.
So actually, if anybody, what I understand is, if anybody intends to pick up this branch, needs to visit a center or a place where it happens, so that you get attracted to the whole science behind the nuclear medicine.
I would strongly suggest that in case if you're considering to take up nuclear medicine at any point of time, do visit any center that is in the city. Almost all major cities in India now have this facility available. And then they should make an informed decision regarding that.
Correct. That's a very, very nice idea to pick up. So now if somebody wants, and there are lots of myths and misconceptions also related to nuclear medicine, if you can mention a bit on the same.
Yeah, when I came into nuclear medicine, a lot of people, including my own relatives, they were very apprehensive that because the word nuclear is something which is misleading. Now, we tend to feel that maybe it is dangerous. There's a lot of radiation that is involved in this. But the word nuclear medicine actually comes from the fact that we are dealing with radiation, which is coming out from the nucleus of the cell. There's nothing to do that we don't have any danger of radiation as long as we are following our protocols properly. Now, I've been in this thing in nuclear medicine since 2001. It's almost close to 20 years now. And we have a way of measuring the amount of radiation exposure we get out of the practice. And there is a certain limit that has been set by our regulatory body. Now, I can vouch for the fact that in the 20 years of my working, I have not crossed the permitted levels for 3 months. So there is a permitted level that is there, that you can get this much of exposure up in every 3 months in your life. Every 3 months, there's a certain limit that you can reach. Me having worked in a nuclear medicine department for 20 years, I've still not reached that 3 months level. So even though we are dealing with radiation, but as doctors, the actual dealing with the radiation is very less. And also, if you're taking adequate precautions, you're following the protocols, it is absolutely a safe thing. Second thing is, a lot of people, they think that it is not a field for females, because as you're dealing with radiation, in future, if they are having a pregnancy, then it will be difficult. They might have to discontinue working in this department. Again, this is something which is not correct. We have a lot of females in our faculties who have successfully delivered their children, and they're working. Yeah, you need to take some precautions, maybe some arrangement changes in how you're reporting, how much you're interacting with the patient. But all in all, it's absolutely not an issue that whether you're a male or a female. There is, in fact, I would say it's good for females because the number of working hours is limited. Almost all departments throughout the country work from only 9 to 5. We don't have emergencies. We don't work on Sundays. So it's a pretty relaxed and a cool thing. And another major misconception, what a lot of people ask me is that, is radiology going to encroach into this field in future?
Correct. Correct.
Again, that is something, see, nobody maybe 2 years before today would have thought that MCI would become NMC and Ayush people would be getting a chance to compete with us. But as of now, how things stand, radiology can never take up nuclear medicine. For the simple thing that we have two things that we're dealing with. One is procurement of these radioactive material for which we have a specific license. And our regulatory body is very, very strict that it will not give this license to each and everybody. You have to do the course of nuclear medicine to get this license. And second is the reporting part. It is equally possible that those people who are reporting the PET CT, as I said, PET and CT, they are two different modalities which have been merged into one. PET part is reported by the nuclear medicine person. The CT part is originally it was being reported by the radiologist. Now, if radiology people can report the PET part of CT, the nuclear medicine physician can also report the CT part of PET. But it does not mean that today I'm going to open up an exclusive CT center and start reporting CT scans. So encroachment in future is definitely a no. Yes, you can have a fellowship or maybe kind of a certificate course, which will help you understand the field better. See, every field has got its pluses and minuses. So just because you have a field, you are into a sister concern field, it is always good that you understand the nuances of the field. For that, doing a certification course is definitely good. But no, it can never be a replacement to what we do. So I think these are the main things what people keep asking me. I have had a lot of people coming to my department, seeing and raising these kind of concerns. But I assure everybody that this is not going to happen, at least in the near future.
That's really nice to know. So now if somebody wants to go about and do nuclear medicine, what are the ways to do that?
So nuclear medicine, till date, it's a very, very small community that we have. If I have to give you a rough figure, there are just around 500 to 600 doctors in India right now. If you compare that with any other clinical field, the number of colleges which offers these courses are huge. The number of colleges that offer nuclear medicine, they're very, very limited. It is done right after MBBS. You can give the All India entrance exam, get into one of the institutes like AIIMS offers it, PGI offers it, SGPG offers it. You have an MD program right now. There's a hospital in Bombay, Tata Memorial Hospital, they also offer. Then you have an option of doing the DNB. You have both primary and secondary DNB in nuclear medicine. One thing what I would like to point out at this point of time is that if you want to go abroad with a degree of nuclear medicine, especially if you talk about US, in US, the specialty of nuclear medicine is actually a super specialty post radiology. So once you have completed your transition medicine, you have done 4 years of radiology, that is where you take up 3 years of nuclear medicine. So if you compare to that, getting into nuclear medicine in India is much easier. You save on your almost 6 years of study. And as of today, there is no super specialty coming up. We are just in the very beginning stages of developing a super specialty into therapy. But till now, it's just the MD course. In fact, when I was doing, it was only a diploma course. Even MD was not being offered at that time. The MD courses came much later after I had finished my courses.
Okay. Okay.
So right after MBBS, you give these entrance exams. I think you can NEET PG exam integrates all these hospitals, colleges, and then you can get into this course. MD course is a standard 3-year course, and maybe I think you have around 10 to 12 seats per year. So it's both. Since the availability is less number of people go. Since less number of people go, the availability is less. And again, one thing is that very few government hospitals have these courses. Mostly they're in the private colleges where they would actually be conducting these courses.
Okay. So now after doing the course, what are the kind of job opportunities that a person have in India, with after doing the MD or the diploma, the DNB courses?
See, right after you have completed, you always have the option of doing the SRship, senior residency. Again, very few institutes offer senior residency, but they do make a lot of difference in how you handle your patients, how you read the scans, and how you discuss with your colleagues. Because just doing the scan is not the end of it. You have to convey the reports to your consultants also. So that is something that you will pick up a lot while you're doing your senior residency. Most departments in India, they are run by a single nuclear medicine consultant. So once you are out of it, once you have finished your MD or your SRship is not mandatory, but it is desirable. You have a very good opportunity of becoming the HOD. If you want to go by the names and the designation that you are given, you'll definitely become the HOD the minute you pass out, because that is the kind of demand that is there in the market right now. If you compare the opportunities, job opportunities that are there, I would divide the job opportunities in 2 ways. The job opportunities that are there in the metropolitan cities and the big cities that are there in every state, and the job opportunities in a smaller state. Now, most people they tend to stay in bigger places. They don't want to leave the metropolitan areas. They don't want to leave the capitals, the tier 1 cities of any state. Now, in these places where the supply is more than the demand, because as I said, there's mostly one person per department. Barring very few hospitals that have 2 or 3, mostly it is a single person in one department. So the supply of doctors in these areas is more. So there, definitely the packages are also equally on the lower side. But if you're willing to move from a metropolitan city to a tier 2 city, that is where the maximum growth is happening right now in our country. Like, if I have to compare the last 40 years, I don't want to go much beyond that. For the last 40 years, the amount of growth we have done in the last 5 years is more than the growth we did in the last 35 years before that. So, and most of these centers are coming up in the tier 2 cities. So if you are if you're willing to move to a tier 2 city, then the demand is much more, and the kind of packages are actually exorbitant. It can almost run into 3.5, 4.5 lakhs per month. Because without a doctor, a nuclear medicine doctor, no matter how big a hospital or how big an organization is, our regulatory bodies, they don't allow the department to function. If the doctor is not there even for a single day, the department has to close down. So that is the kind of demand that is there, and it is just increasing. Day by day, we are seeing so many new centers coming up, and the demand is just going up. And as the incidence of cancer grows and as the awareness of the doctors grows, the requirement of PET-CT grows, this is just going to go up. We don't see a plateau coming anytime soon.
That's really nice to know about the branch, as well as about understanding that tier 2, tier 3 cities also have the 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 opportunities for the doctors coming up. So now,
actually, because we are dealing with the radioactive material, the initial concern was the connectivity to flight and road, because this material, it gets it disintegrates with time. It decays actually, so it's not possible to store it for a long period of time. So connectivity with flights and roads was very important. So as these flights increased, as the roads become better, even smaller places are having big departments.
Definitely. So, adding to that, also wanted to understand, as you have also set up your practice in a tier 2 town like Udaipur, how is your experience in that?
I started my center in Ahmedabad in 2012 and the second center in Udaipur in 2018.
Yes.
There's a lot of requirement in a lot of tier 2 cities across the country. And people are not willing to go and work in tier 2 cities where the demand is actually very high. The patient load is very high, the patient paying capacity is very high, but somehow the big corporates are slightly reluctant to open up these departments. Now, another major difference between radiology and nuclear medicine is, if you see a radiology department, if you see, let us say there are 100 radiology departments in the state, you will find probably around 20 of them are being owned by the government. Probably around another 40 or 50 of them being owned by in the hospitals, and around 20-30 of them being owned by radiologists on their own. They are self-owned departments. Whereas in nuclear medicine, the number of departments owned by the government setups are very, very less. They are less than 10% of the total departments that are there. 80% of the departments are owned by hospitals. And hardly 5 to 6% of the departments are owned by private individuals, or they run as a part of a diagnostic group. Now, out of these also, there are hardly 5 to 10 people who are nuclear medicine physicians who have their own department. Me being one of them, there is a very, very small percentage of people who have done this specialty and they have their own departments. That is the reason, because people are afraid of opening their own departments. And you have to keep working for a corporate at this point of time. That is a scenario as of today. I'm sure there are a lot of young people who are there who have the entrepreneurial skills to actually open a department, run the department. By no means it's an easy job, but it's not impossible also. Somebody has to make a start somewhere. So once these hospitals start opening up, the cancer cases start going up, the requirement of PET CT starts going up, the demand for this is absolutely going to skyrocket. And that is probably one of the reasons why I started the center in Udaipur, because after Ahmedabad, the nearest center was in Jaipur. And in Udaipur, there are almost 6 or 7 medical colleges that are there, and it's very fast. It's becoming a huge medical hub. So the catchment of patients coming from Udaipur was increasing. And it's kind of a service that why does the patient need to travel all the way from Udaipur to Ahmedabad or Jaipur just to get a scan done? The number of super specialists was going up, the radiotherapy units were going up, the oncology setups were going up. The entire treatment was happening in Udaipur, but just to get a scan done, the patient had to travel 250 plus kilometers. So keeping all these things in mind as a business perspective, from the patient's point of view, everything, it was an obvious choice for me to open up the center in Udaipur.
No, that's really nice to know, and I'm sure a brilliant decision to take by settling up there. So now there are some people who I got a question from our viewer. He was like, do you think that there will be some fellowship or something coming up for the radiology people who can then actually work as nuclear medicine doctors? Can this happen in coming up future? Just a view, or your opinion around that.
See, fellowships do exist as of now, but they're not in India. If you talk about places like US, in US, the cardiologist can do a 6 months fellowship, and he is authorized to read the scan. Now, reading the scan is different from performing the scan. So it's like, I have done the scan, I have done my report. If the cardiologist is not happy with the report that I've done, he can read the scan and he can draw his own conclusions. And that is very tense. It is not possible that he can come and sit on my system and start doing the reporting. Because for one, as I said, as of today, the law says our regulatory body, the AERB, what is there, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, it says to procure the radioactive material, you need to have a proper degree in nuclear medicine. Now, no amount of fellowship or anything can give you that license. So if you have to run a department, you need to have a nuclear medicine license with you. So, and this is something which has actually helped us a lot. Otherwise, we would have seen mushrooming of these departments in the country. Definitely. The fact that it is regulated by such a strict body has actually worked in our favor. Yes. Like if you have a X-ray center, maybe somewhere in the remotest of the places, you just need a technician to shoot the films. The telemedicine, through telemedicine, the report can be done. But that is not possible in case of nuclear medicine. You need to have a doctor on board on the site to do the scans. Because what we're dealing with, the radioactive material, there is a specific way how to handle it. There are the protocols that have been made. They have been designed in such a manner that it does not cause any harm either to the person handling it or to the general public at large.
Correct.
So this thing, I don't see it ever happening. That any specialty. Now, today you can say radiology. Tomorrow, any oncologist might say that I have read 10,000 PET CT scans in my lifetime. So can I report PET CT? This is not possible. Like what the cardiologist feared or the radiologist feared. Echocardiography was originally being done by a radiologist. Obs and gynae scans were being done by the radiologist. Now, slowly and slowly, it has gone to the role specialties. But that kind of a thing, probably I don't see it happening with nuclear medicine ever.
Okay. Glad to know that. So now you have already mentioned such amazing things about the branch. What are the pros and cons regarding, something that are good thing and the cons that you find some difficult parts of with the branch?
I would not say that there are actually cons, but it's just the kind of perspective that you have while you're choosing a branch to do your post-graduation in or to spend your life doing that specialty. I would just make few observations and let you know that what the observations are. And based on that, whether you take it as a pro or a con is a very individual thing. One thing is, like, as I said, this is a paraclinical branch. You don't have a direct one-to-one patient interaction. It is very limited. Now, if you are interested, if you want to interact with the patient, explain the scan to him, that is where it ends. You don't treat the patient anymore beyond that. So if you're looking for a clinical branch, patient interaction, again, that is one thing which is not there. As I said before, today you should be ready to travel to a tier 1 or a tier 2 or a tier 3 city also maybe, because yes, there is some amount of saturation happening in the major metropolitan cities. Like if I take, let us say, cardiology or radiology, the HOD would somewhere be in their early 50s or late 50s, and they have some 5-6 people working under them as a team. But you would definitely, there will be a lot of departments where a 30-year-old nuclear medicine consultant would be the HOD of that department. So he has a lot of career in front of him, maybe another 30-40 years of working in front of him. So that way, metropolitan cities are definitely getting slightly saturated. Comparatively, it's not that it's getting totally saturated. But yes, you should be ready to travel to slightly remote areas to work. That is one thing. Another major thing is the awareness of nuclear medicine is very, very limited. Now, even though we completed the entire MBBS, there are a lot of people who have done their PGs also, super specialties also, but still they don't know what is nuclear medicine and what nuclear medicine can do for you. So if you join this medicine, believe me, almost every nuclear medicine physician today is a teacher. He is teaching his counterparts in his hospital, maybe the referring consultants, like what can be done in nuclear medicine, what tests can be done, and how it can help their patients. This continued education happens every day. So if you are a reserved person, if you're not probably going to be able to talk to your consultants, again, this is something where you might feel little handicapped. And another thing, what I said was private practice is again something which we don't see very often in nuclear medicine. Private practice in the sense that those people who have done the nuclear medicine as a specialty and open their own centers. So again, that is something which is very, very limited as of now. So apart from this, everything else is absolutely fine. I mean, there is no better working conditions in any department where you can actually go have an equal time that you can devote towards your patients as well as your social life. And no emergencies, very relaxed. You can see probably 10 to 12 patients a day, do 10 to 12 scans a day. In a very busy department also, it does not cross around 30 to 40. So, which is, and majority of the physical work is actually being done by your technical group. You are doing the reporting part. That is what you do. Correct. So I think that's it's a very individual thing. For somebody, which might be a con, for somebody else, it might be a pro. Because these were the things which, when I had visited the couple of hospitals I had gone to in Delhi, these are the things which actually attracted me.
Definitely, I completely agree with your point. So we have one question by Dr. Abhishek. He's asking, please enlighten about the role of therapeutics in nuclear medicine in the coming future.
See, as I said, therapy in nuclear medicine is picking up right now. What very few people know is that the establishment of nuclear medicine actually happened with therapy in India. If you know that for Graves' disease, we treat with radioactive iodine, and for cancer of thyroid carcinomas, we treat with radioactive iodine. This was one of the first examples how nuclear medicine departments started in India. But then it stopped there. The role of therapy in nuclear medicine was very limited. It was mostly a diagnostic branch. Now, over the past few years, once we have, as I said, started seeing the receptors that are being expressed by many tumor cells, like for prostate cancer, we have prostate-specific membrane antigen receptors. For neuroendocrine tumors, we have the serotonin receptors. Now we are moving ahead in that direction. And a new term which we are frequently using is called theranostics. Now, theranostic comes from two words, therapy and diagnostics. So either we can use the same radioactive material at a higher dose to treat the patient, the same one which we used at a lower dose to diagnose, or a similar characteristic another radioactive material, which will go to the same areas where it had gone when we had done the diagnostic scan. So the same kind of radioactive material or the tracer, what we use, we can do both the diagnosis as well as therapy. So as I had mentioned earlier, what was constituting less than 5% of the workload in a department, now it is going up to 20%, and probably with times to come in future, it will be crossing almost 50% of the workload in any nuclear medicine department. It is going to come up in a huge way. Because if you understand the biology behind it and the physics behind it, it is going to be a very, very specific treatment. So let us say if I'm dealing with a neuroendocrine tumor, any cell that is expressing the certain receptor gets affected. But all the normal cells in the body, even the cell next, maybe 0.05 millimeters next to it, if it does not have the receptor, which is a normal cell, is not going to get affected by this radioactive material, the tracer. So side effect profile is almost zero. So a lot of work is being done, and the future is, that's where I see the future of nuclear medicine going more and more into therapeutics.
Glad to know that. Really nice to know. So now, if you can mention what is the pay scale and a job security with the field, what is the, although you have already mentioned in brief, but for a fresher passed out, what is the pay scale a fresher can expect?
See, again, as I said, it will all depend upon the location where you're looking at. If you're looking at a place, a metropolitan city, fresher could fetch anywhere from 1.5 to 1.75 lakhs a month. It's a very averaged out figure that I'm telling you. Whereas if you're going to a city, a tier 2 city, you can all easily expect somewhere around 3.5 lakhs. And it goes up exponentially with the experience that you have. It's not even linear. If you have, let us say, 3 to 5 years experience, you can reach 4.55 lakhs also. But yes, as I said, the demand in metropolitan cities is lesser than the supply. So there the packages are definitely on the lower side, but
Correct.
definitely comparable to other specialties. And yes, one thing you need to understand is that you become a consultant right after you complete your MD. There is no super specialty as of now. So MBBS, 3 years MD, and you become a consultant.
Correct. That's a big thing with the branch, definitely.
Yeah.
So
and again,
really
as far
nice
as security is concerned, as I said, once you are in a good hospital, you're probably around 28, 30 by the time you complete your MD, your entire life is in front of you. And without you, as I mentioned earlier, without you, the department doesn't work. So rather than you leaving, the hospital is not going to leave you because the department closes if you leave.
Yes, that's true. So knowing entirely about such good things about the branch, let's end this discussion on a high note. Something motivational from your end that has always kept you going, and and also something that can motivate the upcoming students to pick up the branch.
I would say to anybody who is planning of getting into the nuclear medicine department and taking it up as a specialty, as a field, it is very interesting. But to visualize something that you have not seen in pictures or you have not experienced in your life is very, very difficult. So I would say my whole life and my idea of picking up nuclear medicine changed drastically once I visited the departments there in Delhi. So I would definitely suggest that it's a big plus point that now almost all cities across the states have these departments where you can easily go. It is accessible, and we have a very cordial faculty in almost every hospital. Go there, they will show you the department around. See if that interests you, because what interested me might not interest you at that point of time. But I would definitely say that if you actually go spend a couple of days and see the kind of work that is done there, it is a very high probable thing that you will definitely like this field and you would want to be a part of it. And with newer things coming up, as I said, it is not old. It's not an old branch. It is an upcoming branch. I see a very bright future. We are getting into newer things. Almost every year we see some new molecule coming, some new tracer coming, and the kind of diagnosis what we are doing today, we never thought that we would do this 5 years back or 10 years back. So it is still a huge learning curve for us also. We still keep learning in our programs. And the future of nuclear medicine is absolutely going to be superb. I mean, you cannot take out nuclear medicine tests or this department from any hospital that is there. And it's going to be almost be universally be present. Just like where radiology stands today, maybe we were a little bit slow to start off with, but definitely we'll reach there one day.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for guiding us in the regarding the branch so nicely and in such an insightful manner. It's really nice to hear about such good things about the branch, and I'm sure this will motivate so many of our viewers to pick up the branch and to look forward to a positive future with it. Thank you so much for guiding us on this, and thank you so much everyone for listening us and to know about this branch in a deep, insightful manner by Dr. Kashyap. I'm sure this would have been helpful to you to understand about the branch. Do share it with your friends and colleagues, because I'm sure this will be helpful for them as well. And thank you so much, everyone. Also, do follow us on our YouTube and Instagram channels as well, because there you can find all our old videos, which can also help you with your career growth and build a perspective about a branch or something that you're looking for. Thank you so much, Dr. Kashyap, for guiding us on this. Thank you so much, and taking out time for us.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good sleep, and do reach out to us if you're looking for any questions regarding medicine. We will surely try to help you in the best way we can. Thank you so much, doctor. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Bye-bye.